I was just looking at some data last night in terms of virtualization penetration, right, across countries, geographies, etc. And it's very clear that VMware is well established in virtualization and cloud, are well established in the more mature markets, right? But particularly as you get to the less mature markets, APJ in particular, we're not nearly as advanced as we need to be. And it's somewhat, as I've been driving the last several years at EMC, right, it's very much, we have to have the same penetration globally, right? And thus, you can expect, if anything, to accelerate it, put more focus on APJ, right? Make sure the products are right, make sure the channels and partners are correct, right? Make sure that we have the right sales and support infrastructure as well to accelerate our growth in those regions, which are growing well, but clearly well behind in terms of adoption rates to the more mature markets.
Pat and Paul, Charlie Babcock with Information Week. Pat, I believe I heard you say VMware will remain an independent company, and I wanted to ask, is that forever? And Paul, I wanted to ask you, would you say never say never?
Well, quoting Paul, right, never say never, right? So I guess the corollary of that is never say forever, right, as well. But there's no reason on the horizon to change the structure. And if you think about why was VMware created as an independent entity, one is it was a different company than EMC, right? Hardware company, software company, West Coast East, it's just a different culture, right? Secondly, it was to create, right, an entity that truly, right, is positioned for a neutral ecosystem play, right, so that it could partner broadly and effectively across the broad range of both hardware and application and industry and channel partners. Right. Thirdly was to create an independent currency, right, to reward and be able to attract the best and the brightest of the team. All those reasons are as valid today as they were when the company was spun out 5 years ago. I think we just had the 5th year anniversary of the IPO. So there's no reason to change it, right? And as VMware valuation has become greater, it's even more expensive to change it. And so my expectation is that forever, in quotes, is the structure that you see, right? And it's my job to continue to move that forward in that direction.
Hi, Tom Anderson from Network World again. Does VMware have on their radar being able to port to ultra-high density ARM-based servers, which seems like they may be arriving pretty soon?
I would take that is the first of all, we technically have the capability to do that. As you might have noticed, we actually have a virtualization solution that runs on the phone that sits on top of ARM processors. That being said, we think those new ARM capabilities have a long way to go before they equal what the power that you can get out of an x86 processor. There's a fundamental difference between the data center and on a device. On a device, it's really all about low power, and above all, you're not trying to use power when the processor is not being used. When the processor is being used, as you probably noticed, when you turn a lot of apps on your phone, it really runs the battery down. So the big advantage of the ARM is really about how you be efficient in not consuming cycles when you don't need them. In the data center, everything we're doing is to constantly drive the CPUs to be at high throughput all the time. So there's a very different dynamic in the architectures between on the client and on the server. That being said, somebody comes up with a better mousetrap, we'll certainly look at it.
I also, just having looked at this a lot, right, as passionate as I am about, ARM being the architecture of choice for mobile devices, which is where the world is moving on that end of the spectrum. Also, the power efficiency trade-offs possible in the server aren't anywhere near what they are in the handset, right? Because when you look at just the core power of an x86 versus an ARM, it represents a small portion of the power workload when you add I/O, right, memory, all the other power delivery mechanisms. So if you took the CPU power to 0, right, you still have the majority of the power being consumed in all those other subsystems. So I don't think there's anywhere near the value proposition to it, right, and the value of homogeneity, right, with this large and abstracted pool of infrastructure is very large, right, and we think becomes even greater as we move forward, and as we talked about this morning in the software-defined data center. So as Paul said, hey, we'll always look at it, but I'm skeptical. And maybe that's just because I got 30 years building this crazy x86 thing, and I might be a little bit biased. So.
Hi, Beth Paris on Tech Target. Does the multi-cloud strategy specifically include Amazon, and if so, how?
Yeah, I'll take that. Yes, it does, in a sense, in a couple of senses. As what you heard this morning, there are really 3 tiers at which we're addressing multiple cloud environments. The first, highest level one is at the so-called PaaS, or Platform as a Service level. And we've already announced over a year ago that we're making Cloud Foundry available on top of multiple cloud platforms. So there's Cloud Foundry available on top of vSphere, which you can find at cloudfoundry.com. There's 35 partners who are taking that technology and putting it on other clouds, including Amazon and OpenStack. So there's a whole ecosystem emerging of people who are taking that layer and putting it on different clouds. The next level down is the orchestration layer, which is what Steve demoed today, which is where we have the acquisition of Dynamic Ops. That's a technology that allows companies to set policies, and those policies drive where the workloads will go. And that solution already supports Amazon today. So it supports on-premise clouds with vSphere, off-premise clouds that are both vCloud-based and Amazon-based. And when and if we start to see significant OpenStack clouds emerge, it will be able to support that as well. So that's kind of above the cloud layer. The third layer is underneath the cloud, so as to speak. That's the software-defined networking layer. There we don't support Amazon because it's a closed environment. You can't insert something at that level into Amazon. By contrast, as was explained in great detail, we will put our software-defined networking technology into any environment that is open enough to accept it, and that includes obviously our own environments, as well as OpenStack environments. This is something we've done actually very directly in response to requests from customers. Carl, who's our Chief Operating Officer and runs our field operations, has had a program to implement private clouds in our customers for 2 years now. So for 2 years, we took a special part of our field and professional services organization and really dedicated it to implementing private clouds inside companies. And they've probably done more than 100 of those at this point in time. As we did those, we realized that technology is only part of the problem. That if you operate a cloud exactly the same way you were operating it when you had all these multiple independent silos of infrastructure, you're not going to get the value that you need out of it. The whole value out of the cloud is about going to more pooled infrastructure, more leverage of the infrastructure, and more automation. And to do that, people's jobs and processes and procedures have to change. So we've got a lot of feedback from our customers. Once I said, fine, I understand the technology, but tell me how I take care of this big group of people that I'm responsible for and how we operate. So we tried to, from those implementations that we've done and our own internal cloud operations, tried to codify out best practices. It's intended to be a living project. We have partners who are going to work together, so it's kind of a, I don't want to say open source, but it's designed to be a community-based effort.
Hi, Alex Williams with TechCrunch. I'm just curious, Paul, what your new role is going to be at EMC, what you're excited about doing, what's intellectually exciting about your new job, and what you see as a vision for EMC and VMware going forward.
Well, the first thing I'm going to do at the end of this week is heave a huge sigh of relief and enjoy a long weekend. What I'm excited about doing is actually thinking about what can be done on top of these new capabilities, because we are moving towards being able to much more rapidly assemble and deploy computing resources in a much more fluid way than we've been able to do before. And this is coming right at the time, as I said this morning, when businesses are having to rethink the experiences that their users want to see. So people just don't want to see the same old stuff that was done before. The Facebook generation is a post-paper generation. We're also seeing the emergence of the Internet of Things. So everything that's made in the world, from a fridge to a jet engine in the future, is going to be attached to the Internet and constantly dialing home and reporting its status. So the amount of data that's going to flow in potentially to enterprises is going to go up by at least a factor of 10, probably a factor of 100. And you can't just pour all of that data into a traditional centralized relational database and expect to make head or tails of it. You can't. So we need new ways of thinking about things and doing things that then can be layered on top of this new infrastructure that VMware and other companies are building out before our eyes. And that's what I hope to spend the next several months thinking about, and who knows what will come out of it.
Thank you.
This question is from Mr. Uyong Kim from ZD Week in Korea. After Mr. Gelsinger takes over the CEO role, do you think that there will be a lot of changes with your relationship with the EMC? And the second question is that after the Nisira acquisition, whether your relationship with Cisco will change, and if so, how that will change?
So with regard to the EMC relationship, clearly there's a cooperative relationship between EMC and VMware today, and we'll continue that. At the same time, right, my job becomes the leader of VMware. Right, it's an independent company. Tonight I'm having dinner with Tom Jorgens of NetApp, so that'll be fun. Right, it's like last week he was ready to kill me. This week I'm his best partner, so I'm quite looking forward to the juxtaposition that commences almost immediately. But it is very much to continue as an independent company, focus on the partners of the ecosystem, and have a strong relationship for which VMware is leveraging, right, EMC and its assets going into the future. With respect to Nisira, clearly, was seen as a, one press headline, probably one of you wrote it, was bold and brilliant, right? And bold, obviously, for almost no revenue, $1.26 billion, so that's bold. Brilliant, I guess we'll have to wait a couple of years to see how brilliant it really was, but we are quite excited about that space. And what you'll see is a very strong affirmation of the Cisco EMC VMware partnership remaining very firm going forward. You'll see announcements to that effect in the very near future. And they will reaffirm what the partnership is, how we're working together in a world of virtualization, software-defined networking, and one where we will collaborate on how we cross the physical and virtual domain, the hardware and software, and collaborate on delivering software-defined network across that boundary going into the future.
We have time for about 2 more questions. Thanks.
I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Bogomil in the previous session. I'm Robert Mullins from UV, and Microsoft is coming out with Windows Server 2012, and I put it together, and they say it's a competitive platform, and they're going to be drinking your milkshake, going after you in the market. What's your assessment of the competitive nature of the Windows product?
I'll jump in and take that one. I've been living this one for the last 4 years. Microsoft's strategy. This is not a new strategy on Microsoft's part, by the way. This is the
said by Mr. Wynn, right?
They're specifically in the virtualization space. Their strategy for the last 7 years has been to say our product's good enough. Not that it's the leading product, but we're good enough. You should buy us because our product's now good enough. This is the 3rd or the 4th time where they're coming to the market and saying our product is now good enough. The reality is this, people's expectations of what is needed are rapidly maturing. This is not simply about a hypervisor. Everybody has a hypervisor today, and everybody gives it away for free. Hyper-V is free, ESXi is free, KVM is free, Zen is free. Hypervisors are given away today. Where it's all about is the automation layers on top of it. As we try to say, today our goal is to extend virtualization, the benefits of virtualization, not just to the server, but the whole data center. So right at the time when Microsoft's breathlessly announcing that they're now good enough for server virtualization, we're announcing the game's changed. The game's about data center virtualization.
Hi, this is Ibrahim Ahmed from Data Quest magazine in India. The benefits of virtualization, especially cloud, to enterprises large and small, and then to the users and consumers who have devices like these, actually depend a lot on the quality and the reliability of the connectivity. And I think we all know, especially my country, for instance, that there is a lot of ground to be covered by the telecom service providers in terms of the quality and the reliability of the networks that they offer. So what's your view on this? Are you happy with the quality of, for instance, in your keynote session, the signals that I was getting on my phone were very weak. So what do you think, how are the operators doing? Are you happy with them? How do you see them in the next 2 years' time?
Well, you want me to take that one?
Yeah, go ahead.
And being a Moore's Law guy, I sort of measure everything against Moore's Law, right? And computing, right, doubles every 2 years, approximately equal to Moore's Law. You look at storage, right, or data demands is increasing faster than Moore's Law. And if you look at networks, it decreases dramatically slower than Moore's Law. So the network, right, part of it is there's only so much God-given spectrum, right, part of it is, wide area, right, network limitations and so on, but the network is always the limit and will always be the limit, right, based on those simple trends. So in some places it's driven by other capital and infrastructure requirements, other places it's just driven by limitations of spectrum, et cetera. So the question isn't whether we have enough spectrum, the question is how do we utilize that as the most underutilized resource effectively. And I think what you'll see for us going forward, and I think this will become a delightful outcome of our software-defined networking strategy, is being able to take a much more comprehensive view of network requirements and start building things like WAN acceleration, right, more naturally into it. We'll be able to place workloads, right, across cloud environments, not just based on computer memory requirements, but on network requirements. We'll also build, and this is where we're going to partner heavily with the networking, right, both the LAN, the MAN, and the WAN, right, providers in terms of being able to signal more intelligence across those environments. Hey, we want to move this workload here, right? Please start allocating more of the bandwidth, right, into those environments so that we can more effectively utilize the bandwidth that is available, right, and build more intelligence into the service provider network of how they build, deploy, and make that bandwidth available.
And I'll just say that you can look at this as the glass is half full or half empty. Here you are today complaining that your signal isn't strong enough. 7 or 8 years ago, you wouldn't even have had a device of that size or a signal at all. And I regard it as a minor miracle that I can go to rural Andhra Pradesh in India and take out my phone and make a call. So, and that certainly wasn't that way 10 years ago. So this world is changing very rapidly. And these things that we've been talking about, whether it be the virtualization of the data center or improved connectivity of the cloud, this is the tide coming in. This is not some conspiracy theory that we thought up. This is what's going to happen, and all of us need to be thinking about it and how do we make sure that we float on that tide and not get submerged by it.